It's time that tribute was paid to the humble dunny, not just because it's almost gone from the New Zealand scene, in urban areas at least, but because it's played a good and honest part in our folklore, and also, I suspect, in our development. I've no doubt that many a farmer decided on his stocking program or his fertiliser requirements while he was sitting in the dunny, trousers around his ankles and door wide open, gazing out across his land. But this isn't a serious sociological insight into the subject. Rather, it's a nostalgic look over the shoulder, in which dunnies are remembered, more often than not, with affection.
What are some of the more memorable toilets that you can remember?
Well, right back in my childhood, the lovely old toilets down at the bottom of the garden out in the country. Usually they were hidden with some sort of creeper, usually a fragrant creeper like jasmine or a climbing rose. Of course, in these bush huts and these mountain places where the view was so terrific, the thing was to build your toilet where you got a view. That was the first necessity in locating your toilet. But I remember one in the Orongorongo Valley. Actually, this was a very odd lavatory altogether. It was shaped like the Bird Memorial, you know, that pyramidal thing up on Mount Victoria, and it had a stable door, you know, a double door, a top and a bottom to the door. So you could open the top, lose your anonymity but preserve your modesty, or you could open the bottom, which wasn't so modest, but no one knew who it was. Well, we hope. That door caused a lot of fun.
We had a very, very attractively sited and very efficient privy when we lived at Cockle Bay.
Oh, that was beautiful. But then we found that when our friends went to use this particular privy, they just didn't come back. You know, we had sort of everybody else sort of hopping around saying, you know, where is it? And there was somebody there because they couldn't bear to leave it.
Was it used as a place of retreat?
Oh, yes, unfortunately it was, because people used to take books. And, of course, this was in the days, of course, before Playboy. So you took the Auckland Weekly or something like that, Freelance or the Observer. In those days there were 3 reasonably good weeklies. Now we've only got... Well, Women's Weekly's actually not a bad thing to have in the privy nowadays. Mind you, going back umpteen years, we had the Farmers Trading Company's catalogue. Now, that was a very, very useful thing because there were all the things you would look through. There was saddlery, there were motorbikes, there were tents, there were small pup tents for boys and things like that. I think you paid 39 and 6 you could get a .22 rifle. There were all these attractive things to read, and of course, after reading it, when you were finished, you used the paper to finish off the job. Of course, boys always cut out the things that would appeal to women, and we would get terribly annoyed if we found that this 39 and 6 pea rifle had been torn out, because that was one of the things you gazed at all the time. That was almost the start of the battle of the sexes.
One we had was, I suppose you could call it a family two-holer. It was quite a big area. I would say it would be about 6 feet wide and probably about 8 feet long. And then it had a boxed-in seat on the back wall with 2 holes cut in the top. And one was a normal-sized hole, and the other one was quite a lot smaller. The idea of that was that one was for adults and the other was for children.
What about toilet paper?
Yes, well, toilet paper, of course, these days it's no trouble, but in the old days there was a time when it wasn't even manufactured, and so we used newspaper. And when it was a rainy day, we children would stay inside and cut newspaper up, ready for the toilet, put a little hole in the corner, hang it on the nail, and you could take a piece off the nail and roll it into a ball between the palms of your hands, and then open it out again. It would be nice and soft. But the best thing was when Mum and Dad bought oranges and apples, and in those days they were all wrapped in tissue paper. And of course you had something nice to use in the loo.
It was about 300 yards or more away from the house, and it was covered with ivy and honeysuckle. But we had a pet lamb, a couple of calves, and a dog and a cat. And when you went to the loo, they always followed you over. It was quite a... It was really, when I look back on it now, it was quite funny to think about the days when we always sat with the door open. You sat there and you looked out, but when the animals followed you over, they crowded into the loo as well, and quite often there was rarely room to get in yourself. But I've spent many the hours sitting with the paper on my knee, looking out up the hill and into the trees. You sort of went over there, and the time passed, and you sort of just sat. The birds even came down to the door, even though the lamb and the cat and the calf was there with you. It didn't seem it was sort of almost a friendly meeting place, I would say.
You might suppose that an Arcadian simplicity like that has disappeared in the 1970s, replaced by plastic toilet seats and silent flushing systems. Not a bit of it. In the country, I find, the idyllic dunny still survives. Well, it's not everyone who has to put their gumboots on to come to the toilet.
No, and not everybody that would even own a pair of gumboots, I don't suppose. But when you live as far out of the country, it's part of the wearing apparel, just as the city person has slippers, as a matter of course. But they don't have gumboots, as a matter of course.
No. Plenty of wet grass.
Yes, and other things besides. There's the cow heaps of manure or whatever. Come on. Well, we have to move this fella before we can get to him.
What's his name?
His name's Baldy.
Well, it's quite away from the house, but you have deliberately placed it there.
Well, we didn't want the odours mingling with the kitchen odours.
There goes Baldy.
Yes, and now he's out of our way so we can get past. Now past the dog kennels, and then we'll be close to the privy. Get him behind! Get him behind, Belty!
And here we are.
This is where we come. Not so good on a hot night. Well, cold one even worse.
Yes. Well, about what size is it? 6 feet by 4?
Oh, all of that.
Yes. So you don't have to back in or anything awkward like that.
No, and you've got always the nice view of the hills at the same time, and nice fresh odours of the gum trees growing.
Well, you've got privacy anyway, haven't you?
Well, privacy from people looking on, but you can always... very few places you can go to the Dumpty and have such a wonderful scenic view.
Well, it's made of corrugated iron, 4x2s,
Yes.
a few boards on top, and that's it.
That's all, and by the grace of God, it keeps out the weather. Only sometimes, if it's really raining hard, well, you bring your umbrella down, and well, you certainly need your umbrella to get between here and the house.
Well, when you first came here, how many years ago?
25 years ago.
What was your reaction when you first saw the privy?
Oh, one of horror, and I just couldn't imagine that such a thing existed.
Well, you don't have a night cart service.
No, we're too far off the road here. We're really out in the country.
Yes. So what happens then to the soil?
Well, my husband, when it gets nearly full, and sometimes he leaves it a little bit too late for my liking, takes it out into the orchard and buries it around the citrus and the fruit trees.
Yes.
And,
Well, the orchard looks pretty healthy.
Nothing wrong with the orchard. It supplies us with plenty of fruit and plenty to give our friends and relations.
Right. Well, we can shut the door and
Get away quick.
get back to the house.
Past the vegetable garden, back onto dry concrete.
The old dunnies must have been made from quite high-grade timber because they seem to have lasted very well. Would the timber today stand up to it?
Oh, I think the timber today would, but if we made them today, like we used to in the old days, you'd have to be very careful of this damn treatment timber, because you get all sorts of infections for those splinters and scratches. But those days it was just ordinary timber, untreated. It must have got some preservation from something, and I'm not too sure what.
And thinking it over, I'm not too sure whether we mightn't be a little premature in farewelling the dunny. As the conservation lobby gathers strength, is it possible that there'll be a reprieve? That we'll come back to recycling rather than disposal? Will the night cart men come back to ply their solitary calling? Protected by a union, of course. And would we be a happier race as a result, with more time to sit and think, perhaps? It's a thought I leave with you.
I think I miss mostly being able to open the door and look out, see the trees and the sky and the clouds going past. It was a very free, contented sort of feeling, I suppose you'd say. I still sit with the door open, but it's not the same.
That gem was from our archives, part of a feature produced by Jack Perkins, Gillian Thomas and Elwyn Owen for Spectrum in 1975. Have you still got a dunny like the ones featured in that story? Let us know or send us a photo. We should probably revisit the subject of farm dunnies again sometime. I bet there are a few classic thrones out there. I know I've had the whiff of those things etched into my memory.